All right, I would love to welcome this esteemed panel of end user guests here. I'm gonna just throw it over to them to introduce themselves and provide a little context. So basically, we've got end users here. They all come from field applications from our markets, but they all have a connection to AV. So I think I'll let them all elaborate a little bit on where their current position is and how they have a connection with our AV integration industry. So we'll start with Sean down there.
Hi, Sean Tuig from Bloomberg Financial. I've been currently made the global head of AV. I come from an integration background. My prior life was commercial installs in corporate New York, which was always fun with the unions. But I really feel like, I still have my fingers in the pie on the day-to-day operations and what we're bringing into all of our spaces.
And then we'll go to Todd.
Okay, so Todd Renaud, I'm a CIO at Consome Plus. If you aren't familiar with us, we're a retailer that provides in-house credit for durable home goods. And so we're across 14 states, 117 stores. And so for us, from an AV perspective, we're actually just starting to get into this in a more formal way. We have 3 regional call centers, corporate offices, people spread out remotely at all of our warehouses, and so we need an effective way to communicate and cut down on travel. So some of the traditional reasons that we are partnering with an AV. So I'll be able to offer a little bit of a perspective of not having a lot of background in doing that and some of the experiences we've had going through the process just recently.
So I'm Bill O'Donnell. I'm a tech manager at William Patterson University in New Jersey. Originally, I got my start working as a field tech. I'm pretty sure Sean's probably seen some of my work at Bloomberg, and the fact that probably part of my soul is still below the drop tile floor. But after that, I also worked for Lockheed Martin and worked in the AV staffing side on that side, working for the Air Force and also doing some remote assignments for them out in the Gulf. And these days I head up as a tech manager. We have about 300 classrooms or so with a staff of about 4 people. So we try to leverage as much as we can through remote management and trying to work as best we can with integrators. So that's my end of things.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Alicia Henley. I am an end user, as everyone else on this panel. I'm currently an AV operator for the Cy-Fair ISD School District, which is about 40 minutes away from where we are now, up northwest. And before I became in-house AV, I was doing grunt work, working my way up, running Cat 6 all the way around town and in and outs, load-ins, load-outs. So I've always been the end user. My background initially started in audio engineering within the House of Worship. And then I realized there was a whole world full of AV. The more I learned, the more opportunities opened up. So ever since then, I've been, working hard, getting the job done, and I love building relationships. So I think this is going to be a great panel.
Great. Welcome. My name is Brian Brustad. I currently work at the International Monetary Fund in DC, where I am a senior project officer managing a capital refresh of about a $50 million project with audio, visual, and IT for broadcast and AV. Before that, I was actually brought into this industry by Brad Caldwell at IMS, who I think I saw here today. And I've also been a consultant for about 15 years prior to working as a tech manager.
All right, cool. So yeah, we've got a lot of context and connections here. I think it's going to be interesting. When we were planning this panel, I talked to a lot of affiliates here in the room about what you wanted to hear about end user client relationships. Basically, everyone's really interested in how that relationship is evolving. We've all heard over the years that, yeah, we want a long-term relationship. That's what we're trying to cultivate. Well, we know that. So how do we do it now? As the business model is shifting and it's more about service and support and being a partner that way, more about customer, less about hardware, more about solving problems. I thought people wanted to really get to the point with this panel. They wanted to just cut to the chase, find out what these people actually want directly from AV integrator partners. So we're just gonna ask pretty frank questions about when they want to talk to you and what they want to talk to you about. Actually, and that's another piece of context I could ask you to provide too. So the first question I wanted to ask is, exactly, not everyone here is, in the buying position. You're not actually procuring equipment, but at what point in your relationship with AV integrators, like, do you want to hear from an integrator? Is there, are you sitting there at your desk wishing one would call you right away today? Or like, when do you want to hear from us, and what do you want to hear, and kind of where are you in the buying process? So I guess maybe we'll start with Sean. I always kind of like to toss it all the way to that.
So we're heavily involved with everything buying at Bloomberg. We are fortunate enough that we have the street cred within our own company to prove out that we are the subject matter experts in what we do, to a certain extent, right? So we got the big picture, but the nitty-gritty is, where we sometimes get lost. And we have a core team internally that will create the base design. And it's very important to acknowledge that we don't live in a silo, right? We need to ensure that anything and everything that comes into our space is going to be approved, because we've, in the past, went out and got something, spent a lot of money on it, and then our risk and security groups said, this is not coming into our realm because it's problematic for X, Y, or Z reasons. So we will work internally first with what we want to be doing in a particular project or proof of concept that we want to see come into the environment. Then we will do the legwork internally, and then we will reach out. I apologize if there's any in the room, don't really like consultants. I find that the direct interaction with the people that will be doing the work is extremely important. I also want to be able to go to one person with my problems or with my questions. I don't want it to be a game of telephone where eventually the answer comes back to me and it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So in that state, we will design out the basic concept of what we want to do. And then we will reach out to a variety of partners, depending on where we are. We are a global firm, so there's a lot of issues with equipment, specific equipment, or specific design ideas, depending on which part of the world you're in. So that is the point that we do that. We will do that reach out. But I will have monthly meetups with my key integrators just to keep everyone fresh, just to keep, and we're very transparent in what we do. We will tell you, we're not gonna be able to do that this year. We will tell you, oh, maybe next year is gonna be a better time to be doing this, because obviously we answer to the bean counters. So I think the transparency has to be on both sides, though. I don't wanna say, hey, got this big project coming, can you do it? And then, no, you can't do it because your A guy is not available for this particular thing.
And when you're starting this project or proof of concept, does it start with a hardware need, or does it start with like a user need that a lot of different departments are asking for?
Always a user need. So it's quite interesting that Infocom changed their name recently. And the base reason they did it was about the user experience. And that's what we do. We have 19,000 employees, and that means we have 19,000 opinions about how things should be. And a lot of our workers are, engineers in the R&D side, and they're very intelligent people. But they don't get the big picture on how their particular idea could be pushed out to the enterprise. So that's where we come in. We need to develop products and procedures that are good for everyone. So it's totally about the end user experience.
It's a good angle on the approach then, yeah. We'll start there. And actually, yeah, Todd, from the CIO side, you're the one that everyone wants to get to generally. Do you have a lot of reports that people got to get through first?
That's both a good and a bad comment.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I have a bit of a different perspective only because of I provide support basically and solutions across the board beyond AV. So for me, my constituency not only is the company, and we have about 4,000 total employees, about 1,700 corporate, but the board and the senior level executives and peers, those are the ones who have the shortest tolerance and patience and have the grandest ideas. So for us, we rely upon the integrators to come to us with a solution. We don't have anyone on staff internally that can do that. We certainly have some technologies that we use. What we did with our partner is we basically said, hey, we're drinking the Microsoft Kool-Aid. We've got a couple other requirements. You need to come and tell us, turnkey what it's going to take to make that work. So for us, again, yeah, everyone wants to have a meeting and they want to talk, but I do know that for key partners and also key areas of the business that I have to support, I have to invest time to spend with people. So, I always ask that they come prepared, 30, 45 minutes, talk about the technologies that are out there, talk about some solutions. For us, proof of concepts is the way we sell things internally. So again, our partner let us borrow, a device, talk to us about it, used it briefly. It gave people could touch and feel and see how that would work, and then they can expand to that. So that's what we look for is acceleration. And in the retail space, it's fairly low margins, and everything is very fast-paced. So we look at things in terms of 2 to 4 to 6 month implementations and nothing beyond that. So, just a different type of a viewpoint given our size and what we do. So.
Sounds like it's also about user experience for you too, then.
It is, and they have I joke, and I think everyone is, you want it to work, and we always use a cliche, right? If everyone has their phone working, they want it to be that easy.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that is the case, and that's the expectation with some very complex equipment. And the CEO has 30-minute meetings. He comes in, the board comes in, everything has to work, and there's a lot of prep that goes into that. So for us, we look for ease of use. We want it standardized across every location that we have, so our people know how to solve a problem across and no matter what. And then the other thing for us and our partners is there is an expectation that I need to be able to pick up the phone if I have to and reach somebody right then. I recognize they may not be able to get there in 10 minutes, but we can start solving the problems because usually they don't turn up until the worst possible time. So I think some of that, quite frankly, might be just technology today. Obviously, it's hard to do that if you're remotely dispersed, but that's the reality of it.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of people in this room have taken up. They have help desks now, and they are available to answer the calls. So, yeah, very cool. So Bill, you have a totally different kind of scenario when it comes to procurement.
Yeah. So in our case specifically, we actually have an in-house programmer. So when we go to standardize our rooms across the 300 classrooms or so, we have maybe about 2 or 3 different variant types and everything. But generally, they're all programmed the same. Reason being is that we have a large number of adjunct faculty. Actually, one of our biggest schools is our School of Nursing. So we have to make sure that these things are standardized because otherwise, adjunct faculty will come in and they'll look and go, and like I said, there's only a staff of about 3 or 4 of us. So we try to standardize everything out, and that actually makes life easier for our integrators because when it comes time to us putting out an RFP, it's literally, if we put in there that we will provide the code, we will provide what equipment, and this is the we even label down what the pinout is. That way, when it goes out to bid, it pretty much becomes kind of like a paint by numbers thing. And so later on, if there's any kind of troubleshooting, it doesn't turn into, oh well, no, there has to be something wrong. No, we program it the rest of the way of the rest of the classrooms. That pinout's bad. Go and swap this out. And so we try to make things as easy as we can with our integrators because at the same time, like I said, we have faculty who have doctorates and Masters Plus and things like this, and they have very specialized fields. That's wonderful. None of it is in AV. So they will just look and go and say, and as Todd and Sean have put it, well, why can't it just be as easy as my iPhone? Well, we're trying to get to that point. We're trying to make it to where, on the touch panel, My programmer, Damon, has actually gotten to the level of he's polling the devices, asking for feedback. If there's a problem, it'll actually say on the touch panel 9 times out of 10 what the problem is. So the moment we have some of our student workers or some of our part-timer folks go in, they can literally look at the panel and go, okay, I know what to do. And it cuts down on our class downtime, which I won't lie, at our university, and they'll say this about any university, folks don't come there because of the technology. Maybe if you're in the computer science department or something like that, but no one's coming to William Patterson going, yeah, they have 4K projectors. No, they're coming because the faculty can get their job done. They're coming because the faculty are at ease and use all the amenities that they have.
Do you rely on AV integrators to help get things toward that iPhone usability, or is that something you handle in-house? Like, do you have all the pinouts and all the inputs and outputs done by your partners, and then you do the actual interface, or how does it?
We actually provide the interface for them, and if anything, when it comes time to them loading and testing, we actually provide the code. That way, it's also a fallback on us in that we go, no, that's our code. We get that back. It also makes life easier for them simply because, all right, I can load everything up in the test bay, and if there's anything wrong, they can get on the phone with Damon, and we can kind of check up on everything. So we try to make things as easy as possible. It is for our integrators because I won't lie, I don't have the buying power of, say, Bloomberg. I work for a state university. That's why we're trying to make things easier, because if the integrators have to come back, it starts to eat into their overhead, which then turns in for them. I don't know if I want to do business with William Patterson because it's not going to be worth it for me to keep doing these projects. So we try to make things as easy as possible. That way we still get the same repeat folks, and we get multiple bidders on these things. So.
Yeah, and Alicia, I know that we talked a little bit about how your view of how the stuff that gets acquired for use within your facility, sometimes it's all the latest, greatest, but so your experience of what people are procuring to use in your space is
Right, so my situation is a little bit different since we are actually an event venue. So I'm not in the classroom as opposed to Bill, or I'm not at the buying level of a CIO either. So basically there's a bonding process, and if you don't spend it, you lose it. So once it goes through the bonding process, they come in and you install the latest and greatest. But what I really would like from the integrator perspective is not only, just install the latest and greatest, but how are we going to use this latest and greatest and actually talk to us and see where we are going to install things. How are we going to change this setup a month later? Because when you really find out how everything can be used down the line, it creates a greater ROI for the end user, our end user, and ultimately the integrator. So that's something that's very important. After the bidding process, you made $2 million off of this large sale, but how are we going to continue to use this? Because ultimately, if you install this video wall and say we need to move it here, but we don't have what we need to move it to that position, we both lost out, the integrator and the end user. So the conversation has to be a little bit different, and it has to go further beyond just the tech management team or the CIO, because at the end of the day, there are people who actually use it on a daily basis. And we have to be able to use it to the fullest potential, which is easy for us to do our workflow. So that's very important on my end side of things.
Yeah, because you get a lot of pressure if you have something as dazzling as a big fancy new video wall. I think everyone wants to use it for their part of the venue.
Right, exactly.
And if you can't plug it in and use it where you want to use it.
Exactly. We have 4 different venues under one house. We have a stadium, a conference center, an arena, and a theater. So if you only think about how this installation is going to work in this one venue, then that kind of takes away from all the other possibilities, not only for us or the integrator, but also what we can provide to our clients in the ultimate end user experience, which we go back to talking about. It's very important, and it's coming full circle.
You want to avoid anyone saying, "Why did we buy this thing then?" You don't
Yeah,
want
exactly.
anyone saying that.
We got this greatest console, but it can't do what I needed to do. So,
oops.
Furthering the conversation after the bid with people who are actually going to use it and deploy the experience for end users is really where I sit at and how I want to look at it moving forward, and change those conversations between the integrator and the end users.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. You know, for if you were working with an AV integrator, would you want them to do some ongoing service and support, like in terms of training, or even like you said, kind of living in the space with you and knowing what you need to do?
Absolutely, that's helpful. So you can see how we need things to work, not just only talking to us about it, but if you take the time to sit in the space and say, oh, well, in the matter of 3 days, this setup changed. And it changed for 3 different reasons and 3 different clients and 3 different experiences. So when you really sit in an environment and learn how the end users are using it, it's beneficial to both people capitalizing, you know, on the ROI for the integrator and the end users.
I think Felicia has a really good point. I mean, again, proof of concepts for us and maybe the business world works because we're allowed to do that and we don't have to push the money out like you're talking about. But one of the things that I think, and you know, integrators can do is think a little bit more down the lines of solution design. Think a little bit more about, I don't want to call it service after the sale, it's not really about that, but to our point, we've changed all of our vision of how we thought we were going to use it, changed once I got enough of the users in there working, you know, to do that. And so, you know, I'd challenge you to think, if you don't do this already, is think a little bit more on the change management side, on solution and user experience. So, because, you know, in a lot of these places, it's a commodity-based pricing, right? How much can we get for it? At least in my world, I'm going to look at price a lot of the time. So, you know, that kind of reaches a certain level, and then it's all of the services outside of that. And I think some, at least from a CIO perspective, still may push back, but I think you'll find very few that do when you talk to them about the change management and the user experience and the service afterwards, because that's the exact same thing I have to deal with every day when I do an application project or we roll out some new solution internally. They always fail if we don't tackle the change management, we don't pre-sell, we don't educate and do that. So I think you'd be speaking a language which, again, from my perspective, I would understand. Absolutely. And you'll be able to take advantage and avoid some of the situations she talks about, or at least capitalize on then how do we improve the experience and adjust, you know, from a flexibility perspective. So I think it's a key opportunity that might exist for a lot of integrators.
Yeah, so Brian, how does it work so the user experience at the IMF, I mean, is it all about, is there any user experience angle to it, or is it all, I mean, do they care, or is it all just like standardization? I mean, what do you...
Well, it's user experience through standardization. I mean, as far as user experience is everything. We focus a lot in IT-centric areas, so, you know, our users are looking for use through the mobile phone. You know, our CIO, CTO are talking cloud, so basically mobile everything, cloud where you can. So we're very big into that and trying to create the user experience as similar to that of using your personal devices. We spend a great deal of time on user experience. We have about 4,000 employees from 189 member countries. So, you know, a lot of different cultures, a lot of very smart mathematicians and economists and macroeconomists, as well as, you know, everything else that supports our main mission. So it took us probably about 6 to 8 months just going through user experience from the actual, you know, user interface designs, as well as what type of technologies we'll be deploying in conference rooms, multipurpose, you know, classrooms, lecture halls, and spaces. As far as communicating with the integrator, for us, and I have to say from my ethics officer that I'm not a spokesperson for the IMF. They've asked me to say that as many times as I can. So these are my own opinions. But from what I try to do is I try to focus on long-term relationships with integrators. So we typically do indefinite deliverable, indefinite quantity type requests or contracts. So we try to do a minimum 5-year term contract. That makes it hard for those that are not a part of that 5-year contract, and they always say, you know, we know we're not going to get your business for 5 years, and to that, you know, long-term relationships are everything. So I do try to stay engaged with our integrators, that even those that aren't on the IDIQ, I always say feel free to give me a call once a month, beyond once a month, and I consider that more stalking.
Yeah.
And again, I think we tried, again, through standardization by having those long-term contracts. We have strong relationships with our integrators. We understand what our integrators need. They understand our needs, hopefully a little bit better. And also we can then build our service level agreements and more of our capital side turning into the administrative side, keeping those relationships consistent. The user experience is everything. And right now users want wireless, they want mobile. These are all scary things. We want COTS. Right, so we're looking for off-the-shelf products. We're not looking for customization wherever we can. We want standard product, and that's kind of what we're shooting for.
Okay. So this is a room full of people who do customization, and so one of the things everyone wanted to talk about with this panel is specifically how to avoid being a stalker. And because it really does come down to, genuinely as an industry, we're all in this murky area of what is a valuable sales meeting now. We used to walk in and talk about hardware. Hi, we got this cool new thing. So what's an awkward sales meeting? What's a better sales meeting? When people approach you now, they should probably walk in and start talking wireless and mobile. That's probably where they need to begin. But then, I guess maybe we could describe the ideal sales approach. From a therapy standpoint, this could be very healing for a lot of people. I feel like Bill, he's got an answer already.
I do. In fact, just recently, we had a gentleman come to us from, he was coming up all the way from Georgia, and God bless his heart for this one. He came up and he kind of came with the approach of, he's been selling AV for education and everything. All right, very good. All right, let's talk. And he asked some basic questions of are you an Epson house or NEC, this or that. We gave him some of our heads up and everything. And he was like, oh, okay. Well, I have this thing from the company Hovercam and everything, and I'd really love you guys to see this thing called the Pilot. And I said, okay, I'm going to pilot you over to one of our classrooms. Because if you haven't seen the thing, it is a good, unified, all-in-one kind of structure and everything, which is great. It's that is based more through K through 12. It's the kind of the smartboard one-touch PC that then that does an HDMI wireless link to a display behind the room. That's fine. In the K through 12 world, that's great. I have no problem with that. I'd say, normally I'd say, oh, go talk to the college of education folks. However, I oversee the college of education folks, and they love smartboards, and I have a burning passion against it. But anyway, reason being,
I don't know why.
But the thing is, I talked with them and I said, listen, do you have GSA contract pricing and everything like this? Yes. Okay, great. Do you have, your state contract paperwork all put together? Oh, yeah. I said, okay, that's great. I said, in the future, we'll probably do some parts buying from you and everything, but I said, you really should do some more research about this stuff. I mean, this was a complete cold call, so I can't fault him too badly, but at the same time, it's, hey, I've got this, and I go, hey, I've been there, done that. But on the better side, though, since we've had these kind of chats and everything, I will say this. Normally, I used to work for, like I said, I used to work for Lockheed Martin, so doing federal government work, it's always the lowest contract bidder. And I won't lie, when you do the lowest contract bidder, you do get what you pay for. And that coming from that world, I kind of talked with our CIO, and we kind of moved things. We kind of chit-chat about some things because, once again, at the state government level, they're still going, yes, well, we have to go with the lowest contract bidder and this and that. And I went, can I put some stipulations in there? They went, well, like what? I said, can we put certain minimum certification requirements and things like that? And they said, well, yeah, are there, do you guys have, some accredited organizations and anything? I said, oh, yeah. So we started adding these in. And just because, as I say, I'm not going to get on this or anything, but there has been integrators or, some folks who kind of came in and, they did the labor estimate numbers, and I kind of looked and went and said, there's no way that you can actually going to do this at the rate you're doing it. There's just no way. And, the first go around, it was, all right, well, Bill, we went with the lowest bidder. So I went with that, and I spent more of my time babysitting than anything else. So after that, we went and started adding in qualifications. And some of them were pretty straightforward. There were like one or two that we put in, and I kind of refer to it as the Diamond Dave clause. Does anyone here, as I say, everyone here knows about David Lee Roth and how he had like ridiculous contract writers? Yeah, like no brown M&Ms and a brandy snifter. Mm-hmm. So they actually had an interview with him, and they asked him, like, what was it with the crazy contract writer? Because, if you saw it, there wasn't any, if there was no brandy snifter with no brown M&Ms, he would, like, trash the green room and be like, I'm not going out there. Well, they interviewed him, and he said, on the back end of the contract writer, were numerous sound and rigging and stage requirements. Mm-hmm. He said he knew that if the folks read the small details and saw the things where, oh yeah, no brown M&Ms, okay, got it. That also meant they had gone through the entire package and actually read it and went and said, oh, we actually have to reinforce the stage for this, okay. So he knew going in, if they had read that, they had done the other things on the back end. So in our case, what we did was we took some kind of basic ones. There was the HD Base T certification. There was the Chief Certified Partner certification, which any well-known integrator would look at those and go and say, "Oh yeah, those are okay. Yeah, we have those. I've had Bob go and work on those just to get some Infocom renewal credits and everything." But when we put those in, when it came time for us to do the bid review process, our contracting folks looked at everything and they said, "Oh yeah, we found it that they didn't provide this cert or that cert." And we're like, "Well, that means they're disqualified." And the red flag suddenly popped up when they were told that they were disqualified. They said, "But we have certifications that supersede them." And I said, "Guys, if I'm asking for it, it's kind of a black and white thing. If I said you had it, you'd need to provide it. But we have, Crestron and Extron certs that supersede it." I went, and you have Infocom certification, correct? Yes. Well, HD Base T is a standards-based organization as well. And also, guys, that would have been 10 minutes of, 10 minutes of mouse clicking, and you would have gotten this through. It's, in our case, we're trying to raise the standards so that I don't have to spend my evenings babysitting techs and having a girlfriend be mad at me, going, "Where are you?" "I'm in the classroom. The guys are soldering." Really? But in all honesty, that's me. We're just trying to raise the bar on these things, and so we're trying to get away from the lowest contract bidder to the lowest qualified bidder. Right. And it's one of those things where we really just want to raise the bar. On top of that, the other thing we also added in just recently was that if you're going to bid on some of our work, we're going to add in PMP certification. That way everyone, it's not just you can slap any project manager you want on this. I want guys to, actually keep an eye on things. Because at the end of the day, when we had our last bid, I think the only times we had meetings were for a punch list for, "Oh yeah, you guys had the relays for the up-down screen controls backwards, and in two of the rooms the projectors were a little keystone, so you got to adjust the pitch." But other than that, it was done. And that's the thing. We're just trying to raise the level so that we're trying to make things easier to deal with our integrators and try to make life easier for us. So that's my soapbox. I'll get off that.
Well, I think we can all agree with you on most of those points. But I guess, so for the rest of you, what makes a sales meeting exciting for you? If someone, showed up, what makes it worth your time? What makes you almost giddy with the anticipation of a meeting with an integrator?
I want to hear about the PMP. I agree completely with Bill. For me, there's two of us at the IMF that deal with both the capital projects. We actually do all the events, and then we do all of the administrative and operation support. Now, we have a great deal of vendor support. behind us, right? We have a lot of vendor contracts.
But you juggle chainsaws just like I do.
But it's an awful lot of effort. And so as an integrator, what I'm looking for is reduce my effort, not increase my effort. And integrators that have people that came up through the AV industry as their project managers versus AV integrators that hire project managers with PMP certifications that understand project management workflow. They don't need to understand AV. The best project managers I've had on my projects know a lick about AV, and it's because they've got broadcast engineers or AV engineers and specialists supporting them. I myself, I'm a subject matter expert in AV. I don't really necessarily need someone that knows AV to be my PM. But I will say, the ability to communicate, strong communication, quick communication, strong project management, a strong project plan, not having the project plan come after the project is done, which is amazing how often that comes. I don't want to have to hound you for an invoice. That to me just blows my mind that I have to beg people to get paid. And it just understands that every single time I have to touch something twice, that's time away from us. So, change management processes are a huge thing for us. Understanding that we, the IMF, I think we average something in the neighborhood of 40,000 attacks a day on our network. We have, something in the neighborhood of just under 100 attacks that would be considered aggressive, government-sponsored or the like. So we have a very strong security posture, and believe it or not, AV is on the network. I didn't know if any of you knew that, but so we are very interested in a very strong security posture, and part of that is change management, understanding what's been changed, how it's changed. Right. So these are the things that if an integrator comes to me with these things, I'm assuming that you're qualified. Now, I don't work low bid, so I have the luxury of assuming that you're qualified because in general, I'm bringing a top 10 select few in. But the step above are in your processes and making sure that your processes, your standards are at a high enough caliber. And in general, I do offsite inspections, so I can learn a lot from your warehouses and from your offices. A messy warehouse means a lot to me. I mean, it basically is telling me that you might not have your processes in place. So those are the types of things I'm looking for.
Yeah, I would definitely have to agree. Someone coming to me, if it's just a cold call, someone coming to me, don't bring me a product. I don't care about a product. I can look online. I can look up a product. I probably have seen the product. I probably have had the manufacturer call me directly about this brand new product. I do want to see, bring in your book of processes. I can look on your website. I can see your case studies. That's not bringing anything to me unless you're coming with me with your case study and this is how it played out. This is how the whole project went, soup to nuts. That is very important. And taking the load off of us is obviously very desirable. I'm in a very similar situation. We have 170 offices around the world, and we've standardized and we do a process 1 to 2 times a year of what that year's standards are. And it's not just us, right? We will work with our integrators because you guys see so much more than we see, especially since we have standardized. Hey, we like these products for this application, these products for this application. But you are doing a variety of installations on a variety of different places that could work for me. I don't know that. You do know that. So that's very important. We rely on our integrators. For example, in the EMEA region, we have one AV project manager that oversees the whole region. We have 25 to 30 offices there. He can't go to every single office. My travel budget's not that big. So we rely on the same core group to go and do an upgrade into a training room or a auditorium space. And we can then come in for one day and do a closeout with them. Once they provide us, this is where we're at. This is all the things we have. This is your list of IP addresses. Something as simple as that has so much importance to our life. So it is definitely you turn into an extension of us, right? You're a bigger part of our family when, we have a lot more than you, but we still don't have enough employees, focused on the AV realm. All told, globally, I have 3 people that are taking care of design, build, and new projects. So obviously, we're going to leverage our integrators a lot.
Right. In our situation, it's a little different because these guys, they're all standardized, right? We have all these different venues, and this venue has, a restaurant in it. This venue we got the AMX over here. Like, everything is different. So bringing standards to the table is something that would benefit in our situation. So standards going into the sales process is something that should definitely be brought up front, because even though our industry has a lot of standards, Infocom standards, all kinds of standards, not every space has met this level of expectation yet. So bringing those standards into a place that might not have them is very valuable, and it shows that you can add value outside of the hardware. So pitching beyond the hardware as well is like, how are you going to use it? That's what I want. How are you going to use it? And then tell me about the latest and greatest gear. That's fine. Like you said, we know the gear. We go to Infocom. We get the emails. We know the gear. But how is this going to work? And how is this going to standardize the process for us across the entire venue? So it's a little bit different from my point of view, but standard is something that is definitely a sales point. And then as an end user, what I don't want to do is have to go back and reinstall things. So we have a team of 8. So you come and install the latest and greatest, but we have to go back and reinstall it. That causes us time to where we could be serving the client, opposed to reinstalling the gear the way that we need to use it in multiple situations. So what I really want is it done right the first time. So we don't have to go back and do it, and we can actually run a show instead of being a system tech. So we juggle both of that, operating and then actually having the system tech it ourselves. So when it's done right the first time, based off of a standard and based off of how we use it, then that saves us a ton of time, and that's what we want in this end user perspective, anyways.
I would just add a couple quick things. We're a public company, so for us, read one of our earnings reports, our last press release, or something, and show up knowledgeable. You can gain a lot of information through some of the mechanisms that I know that are out there where you can actually find out, it's social engineered based, but you can find out 70% of what we have installed through your network or through these tools. It'll tell you what's out there. So becoming armed and knowledgeable. Realistically, talking to someone on my team first is probably your best way in, because I just can't handle the initial deluge, but don't spend a lot of time there, because at some point it's got to get up to me, and you're going to want to be able to get there and find out, do we have any opportunity. Come with samples from clients in my clients of yours that are in my industry. So I'm actually consumer finance and retail simultaneously. So you have 2 business units. You can say, we've done this, this, and this for similar type companies, and here's what they're leveraging out of it. If you want, come to me with ROI. Don't give me, text that says, what's happening. Give me some numbers. Show what some other customers have done. Come to that day 1 or day 2 when we meet from that perspective. And just being, I think, for everybody, it's not just for me, it's respectful of time. We need to be fair and do the same thing to you and let you know that. But, having shorter meetings, not emailing me 17 times, and, the new one is the 4 things where they say, you're not replying either because this, or, you're some kind of joking thing or whatever. That's an automatic delete from that. You got to form a personal relationship with somebody on the team that's willing to rep that. So I think a lot of it's the standard sales approach, blocking and tackling. And I don't mean disingenuous, I mean the real part of that. It is hard for me to know what solutions are out there, and if I never talk to anyone, I'll never get smarter about that. But those are some of the things I think to think about.
Kristen, one other thing, and that is, in some cases, like for us, we've actually built a partnership with some of the local manufacturers. For us, I won't lie, we're about 10 minutes away from FSR. I mean, to the degree I could huck a rock and it would probably hit Aunt Sandry's window. But they know, but our education sales rep, Gina, is very well versed in these things. And she actually at one point brought an integrator by and kind of gave them a heads up ahead of time, so we could at least understand, like, this is where they're coming from, this is what they want. And they partnered with them in that they had their little wireless charging pads and everything. Which, it's one of those things, some of our older faculty just looked and went, oh, can it charge my phone? I'm like, show me what you have. And they had a flip phone. And I went, no. But there was an unexpected benefit in that we decided to invite a couple of faculty members because they were showing off their huddle block system, which, it's a nice little piece of furniture. And one of our College of Business faculty members looked at it and said, wait a minute. Like, this is for the newer phones and everything, right? And I'm like, yeah. And I said, so the students put their phones on the pad and it charges it wirelessly. I said, yeah, that's the general idea. And he went, oh, see, that's going to keep them honest, because if they want to charge their phones, they have to keep it on the pad, which, I won't lie. The smartphone is the bane of just about every college professor that they'll ever see it, with the exception of business majors or graduates, because they live on the phone. But they liked it because, wait a minute, this keeps our students honest. Oh, that's great. And then the one thing that ended up happening was, they put the phone on the pad, and the pad beeped. And all of a sudden, the faculty looked and went, does it have to beep? I'm like, I looked at FSR. I'm like, does it have to beep? They're like, no, we can make it. We can easily change that. That's not a big deal. But it was an unexpected bonus because all of a sudden, we went from faculty not wanting smartphones to all of a sudden, oh. Well, the students can have their phones out there, right there in plain sight, and it keeps the students happy because they get to charge their phones. But in our case, we also ended up having an integrator who said, "Oh yeah, sure, we'll come around and we'll do the core drill cuts and the tables and everything else." And we were able to work out a very sensible price for about, let's see, we had 6 classrooms that had about 240 units or so. So it worked out well for them.
Yeah, because I think that's another thing that we're all seeing too, is the manufacturer relationships, with end users directly. And, ideally, those manufacturers are pulling in the channel to do the work. And it sounds like that's kind of an ideal meeting, was when the manufacturer brings the integrator to have that conversation. Do you all find that your relationships directly with manufacturers are influencing your buying decisions and who you're going to work with in terms of integrators? Or?
I think it comes down to how much knowledge you have about the particular, product area. So for those that come from an AV background, they're already interested in learning and understand that. For me, I wouldn't even know how to, go about that. And even if I look at beyond more from a traditional IT of, hardware, servers, things of that nature, that certainly is advantageous, but now it's all about flexibility. Again, I keep harping on solution design, the change management, the user experience. All of that takes a different mind to be able to come up and think about that. And I challenge my team all the time on this actually there's 2 ways of looking at it. Is sometimes you don't want to answer the questions that aren't being asked, so don't volunteer too much information, right? But on the flip side, I want an integrator that is going to answer some questions that I'm not asking, right? I don't know what question to ask. I don't know what I'm really looking for. I read something, I heard something, I know I'm trying to solve a problem. And so I think an interesting, partnership is the same scenario, that Bill talked about, which was, you have the manufacturer in there to talk about the product, but then you have somebody else who can think about, and the integrator think about, well, how could we use it? Set it up on the table. Oh, it's beeping. Well, then the manufacturer can go back and say, oh, we can take the beep out, right? And the integrator can think about that. Then they're thinking about how are we going to actually core drill and how are we going to get all the power to it and that's what's going to do to the power requirements and just kind of that, process. So, and maybe it's that is a partnership that works, but I think in many cases, I would never be in a situation where I'm going to have a manufacturer relationship from that perspective for AV. So, I think it depends on the company.
Right. And I have a relationship with manufacturers because of my personal brand, right? I've stepped outside of the office and I get in front of the manufacturer's face and I find out what's new, what's next, what's coming down the line. And then, but in the office, I don't usually connect with the manufacturer until after everything's installed because they come in and train us. So the manufacturer isn't in the picture until after everything is installed and we say, hey, well, we reinstalled everything like this, so now train us on how this is going to work in our, this is how we
Reality
set.
versus expectation.
Exactly. So in the office, we don't see the manufacturer until everything is done. And I don't know if that's because the relationship between the vendor and the manufacturer, or if the vendor trains, there's a relationship building process there as well, where we all just need to become stronger and make the relationship full circle to where everybody's kind of talking more, figuring out the process, and engaging more.
Yeah, and it does go to the standardization, though. We're totally opposite.
Yep.
We standardize on either a manufacturer or a type of equipment. We will establish those relationships with the manufacturer, and then it turns into the circular, full relationship. But again, this is a one or two times a year we do this, so it's not like people are getting locked out. It's not like, we want NEC and that's it. That's not the way it works with us. It is, for this particular application, we found that this thing is the best, but come talk to me about what else is going on out there. It's, and to go back to the perfect sales pitch, the know your customer is the most important thing. Ryan likes things in the cloud. I'm not allowed to have anything in the cloud. Nothing. So, and there are ways to go about, figuring these things out. We have very strong NDAs about everything. So it does get difficult at times to really figure out what we have internally. But, there's been members of our team that have spoken on panels. It's on Twitter. It's on, on different manufacturers' Facebook Live accounts. To do your homework. It's really important because it could be very beneficial in the long run.
All right, yeah, so that's, I guess I'm keeping an eye on the time. So in terms of, I was thinking about that in terms of working with manufacturers directly and the various influences on your purchasing decisions. Like, what kind of projects make you immediately think, oh, we need an AV integrator for that? And what kind of projects are, oh, that's a huddle room, I got that. Is there, what makes you immediately think, I need an integrator?
Sean, you want to
We recently completed our new London headquarters. We needed many hands in the ring. Okay. But for a lot of these things where we've gone down the rabbit hole of standardizing a simple conference room. We're very hard set on what we have in these conference rooms. And in New York, I can do a box sale and have my electricians install it. But anything past that conference room, and these are very simplistic conference rooms that has the display in 5 cables, right? That I don't need an integrator for. But anything beyond that, absolutely. We refresh a training room or an event space, absolutely. Every single time we'll have an integrator on board. We will not necessarily have a consultant if it's driven internally. Our London project was a typical capital project driven by an architect. So one of the issues we ran into with that was, who is the end user? So who is actually allowed to speak to whom? That is one of the most difficult instances, and that's why I like to drive everything internally. From we want to do the refresh projects, or we have our seat at the table. Because we are not the end users either, right? I'm not the guy that is utilizing the space. So, we have an event space. How are they going to be used? So we internally need to pull in all the parties that will be using those spaces. And then we need to give you access to those same people. So if you have a particular question, it could funnel through to the whole group.
Right. In our case, it comes down to time. How long is it going to take for this project or our stadium revision to be done? We've got 8 to 10 people. Do we need to bring in an integrator who's going to come in with the full team and get it done within this 2-month period before football season kicks off. Because, you don't want everybody walking into a half-done stadium or arena. So really it comes down to time management. How many people do we need and how soon can we get it done? That's what it's about for us. And then typically that's when it comes in, because the integrator will come in, they had to rush and do it in 2 months. After the season's over or that event is over, then we go back in and we take a look at it ourselves and reconfigure things. So it's really time-based on our end.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, yeah.
No, I was going to say, in our case, we had a new construction in which we had a new building for our communications disorders, our public health, and nursing. And that was about 40 odd some rooms, about 15 of them. We actually had a specialized nursing simulation lab, which, if you've ever seen those things, they're actually pretty cool. But at the same time, the tech that was involved with it wasn't really that bad. But when you're talking about 30 odd some rooms or so, along with us, handling the programming, handling maintenance, handling, lamp replacement and things like that, we just looked and said, no, this has to go to an integrator, because would we want to do that ourselves? Oh, sure, of course. Do I want to be in a open construction floor with a hard hat every day? I've kind of done that already. I'd rather avoid that if I can.
Exactly.
But it comes to size of scope. Like Sean said, when it comes to some conference rooms, or we already have established classrooms, we look at everything and go, yeah, we can handle this. And usually that's during fall or winter breaks or things like that. But most of our big time work, if it's a new construction, no, we just don't have the time, because we have to keep the classrooms going.
Yeah, so for us, everything's AV integrator. We rely heavily on consulting, just because a lot of our efforts have to be bid, and that seems to be the way we get the bid documents done. But I think we have an operations staff, a fairly decent sized operations staff in-house of, I think, 17 to 20 on-site vendors. They are one of we consider them an end user, right? So they manage our multi-purpose spaces and our venue halls. They're working on the equipment day to day, so they can tell us what's working and what's not working. So to have them do the integration, which is something that they could do, we consider that a business conflict of interest. Just they're the ones telling us what we need, so therefore it'd be hard for them to then sell us what we need.
Well, it makes sense to me.
So I think mainly the reason we don't involve our operations team is strictly just to try to keep a separation of church and state, if you will. But I think, as far as consulting services, it's definitely been hit or miss with us. We have found, with architecture teams, they're beholden to the architect that they do, 30 some odd projects a year with, not necessarily beholden to me, the end client that they're going to have this one capital investment with, and then they'll see me again in 15 years. So I think that's painful when you're on the tech side. We generally, I think bid specs are there to get apples to apples bids from all of you integrators. And one thing I've known is that I've yet to see a detailed bid spec since maybe the late 1990s. Might have been the last time I actually saw a consultant spec that went down to the nitty gritty of where every single nut and bolt went. I can think of a couple, Thorburn Associates. Steve Thorburn was immaculate design drawings back in the day. I think this day and age, every single bid we put out a line item for design, integration, and value engineering. So we basically want the integrator to realize we recognize the value. One, we recognize a bid document is not handing you a design, right? That just isn't the case. If you think that's the case, and if you are selling that as a case when you win a bid and say, everything's done for me and I don't have to put any thought into this at all, maybe in certain situations that's what they're selling it as, but in general it's just not true. So we want you to recognize that you are going to have to put effort in this. You are going to have to do some design, and also back to Sean and Tom's point. Although we have standardized quite a bit, we want your great ideas, right? There are some really great ideas out there, and if we don't hear them, then it's our fault for not being clear that we're looking for those from you. So I blame myself when I don't hear those. I'm a fairly out there person, dynamic. Sometimes people get a little shy around me, a little forbearing. But in general, we're always looking for the great ideas. So make sure you come to us with them and present them. And in general, I'm not going to be shy about change order requests and change management, because it all comes down to the user experience, right? Is this the best thing for my users? Is it the best thing for the project? So absolutely, we're going to take a look at those, right? And in general, our specs are not so product specific in certain instances, where if you say just as the integrator, we have worked with this 10 times more than this other product, would you consider it? Now there are certain things, we do buying power, right? So that we do work directly with manufacturers and leverage certain relationships, in which case it's very hard to look outside of those, but where we can, we're open.
Do you think, is there an opportunity, kind of to what Sean was saying, actually what everyone's saying about user experience, is there an opportunity for integrators to come to you with user analytics? If they came to you with a picture of their other projects, or maybe even your own data, and they had an interpretation of it that could help you solve a problem, because you're probably monitoring, tracking stuff. I mean, it's but maybe not.
We cover a little bit of data at Bloomberg.
But yeah, would that be something that if someone showed up with a little bit of an interpretation, some analytics to prove like this is a better user scenario?
Absolutely. You can take a look at we do a lot of things in-house that manufacturers are now doing, room booking systems and integration of your appointment calendars with your video conferencing suites. We've built that all internally over the past few years. So we're able to pull a lot of that data, but it does come short. I was actually this weekend, I was looking over space utilization for our conference rooms, and we have no way of tracking it. We have ways of tracking this size room was used this many times, but how many people were in that room, right? So are people misusing a 6-person conference room and having 1 person in it 90% of the time, when we can, for space planning in the future, build 2-person conference rooms? Or is it the other way around? Are we walking around, there's 15 people in a room that only is supposed to hold 3? So analytics is hugely, hugely important to me personally. And I don't see how it could not be used in other applications. There's product out there that can do a lot of these different things. There's face tracking software. There's, occupancy sensor. Build it to, what does that total package look like for us? How could we bring that in-house? I don't have the time, because I'm sifting through Excel spreadsheets and looking at data to figure out, like if I take this and take this and take this, and we can bolt it together, and then it's not an AV project anymore, right? It's a facilities project now. So you as an integrator are showing greater value to us than just this pigeonholed AV thing.
I think one of the smartest things one integrator did when they were selling us on a project, they sell us a business analytics package for AV, and one of the things they included was a quarterly review of the data. So what does that do? One, it keeps you in the facility longer, right? You're getting our business analytics, and based on those business analytics, you can say, this is what's working, this is what's not, these are some recommendations, right? So it becomes could become a follow-through sale. right? But I thought that was a very interesting way of attacking the problem. And again, if you're now my host cloud facility that has all that business analytics, that's basically that next level of service. So yeah, the business analytics, we track everything. We've been begging manufacturers for the people counter for years. So I will say, as an integration firm or manufacturer, you know at least 2 companies who are interested. But and we do. We track occupancy. Can't tell the number of people yet, but when someone's booked a meeting, whether they showed up that meeting, whether they showed up that meeting 15 minutes late, what systems they're using, the fact that they're not using any systems, all of that. The fact that nobody sits at the head of the table anymore. We actually moved all of our laptop interfaces to both side tables because we found out only 2% of the time was anybody actually connecting a device at the head of the table. It's just little thing. All of a sudden, we move it to the opposite side where the other one was, and the utilization went up 40%.
That's interesting.
Right. So these things, and again, we do a lot of test environments where we will basically stand up things that we're trying out in a small subset of rooms to try to figure out the yeas or nays on them before we make the big move. But
cool. Well, that's definitely a good what's next kind of topic. And I think that's about the time we have for the panel right now, but I think we have time for a couple questions, right? I would look for Tim Albright, my boss. But yeah, I think we have time for a couple questions. You want to pitch anything to these end users out there? I don't know if someone's running around with a mic. Hi, Lindsay.
So you guys have talked a lot about how important change management is. Can you describe some processes that you...
It's Alicia's. It's a microphone.
Yeah, that's
it's
a
Alicia's.
It's a mic.
Yeah, it's a catch box.
Can you describe some processes or some elements or things that you've seen integrators do on change management that have worked really well?
Well, I mean, so yes, I can offer some. For us, I think there's some of the standard training and education that goes along with that. For us, also it's training the right users. So in our corporate office, it is the executive assistants that need to know how to do everything backwards and forwards. They're the ones who invariably get called. My help desk, they all need to know that and how to do that. I myself, serve as both CIO and help desk at the same time because I'm the IT person in these meetings, and so I need to keep things going. So I need to know. So it's a constituency basis, thinking beyond the 1 or 2, maybe the AV team needing to know how to work it. They'll be there in 5 minutes, but they won't be there when something's going wrong. So there's that piece. Talking a bit about, from a change management perspective, is also what technologies exist there and then understanding how they're being used. So for us, again, I joke about the Microsoft Kool-Aid. We also use Zoom as well. So we haven't actually rolled out Skype for Business yet. So we're using Zoom, but we're going to use both. And why, and this is where the change management came into, is we realized that for group meetings, Skype for Business didn't work as well, whereas Zoom worked really well in certain use case scenarios. So that comes as, had we learned that a little bit more through part of the project of implementation, we would have been able to discover that and then adjust all of the training materials, all of the education, all of the communication, make sure we had user IDs set up. So to me, change management is still very traditional, like you would do any system that's rolling out. You're going to, do the education, do the communication, the follow-up, have people sit in with the testing so that they can then be organically able to address that afterwards. So that'd be just a short thought on that.
Oh, yes. You want to throw her the...
Just throw it at her. Just throw it. Hi.
I'm interested to see if you guys are seeing device as a service or AV as a service as something that you're interested into being offered to.
Well, I'm looking at Sean on this one.
No.
the answer for us is yes. It's something that we're interested in. It's definitely on the, I'm going to say, bleeding to cutting edge. at this point. Now we're about 60% broadcast and 40% audiovisual. So we're a little mixed bag. So I mean, we have a lot of subject matter experts in macroeconomics. There are a lot of individuals in the finance sector who are interested in our positions in certain things. So we do a lot of biweekly press briefings, and we're out in the media a lot. Also, we do a lot of training for intercapacity development for countries. So basically offering training on how to operate economics at a country level. So in that respect, we are far more cloud. So on the broadcast side, they're a little bit further ahead of us than we are on the audiovisual side. So we're already looking at cloud-hosted services for our media library, all over video archive, things of that nature. Now that said, again, security is a huge concern for us. And so when you get involved at that level, just understand that there is a higher level of scrutiny put on your project, a much higher level of scrutiny. And you need the resources to be able to talk the talk. So you're going to need experts in AD, and you're going to need experts in secure storage, secure infrastructure. So obviously you can find partners that have this expertise. But I think in general, where we're looking at cloud is definitely in our video, our assets that are there for long-term storage, and things that we want to make available to the public. We're looking at it for our business analytics piece of our control and automation. Right now, we're just looking at what's the simple things, the things that it seems like manufacturers are already putting out there, the things that are easily doable. And then obviously with web collaboration and things of that nature, soft codec, those types of services that are already pretty prevalent out there as a service. We've thrown out a lot of ideas. We've thrown out, do we do AV as a service? We no longer own any of the AV capital in the facility. Would we be willing to do that? That requires a long-term contract, and we're talking a very long-term contract. And for what I gather the posture of our procurement teams and things of that nature, it's not a no, but it's definitely would require the right partners and the right understanding. It's something we've looked at. We could take it all that way.
Yeah, I agree with Brian. Same thing in our case. We don't have matters of national security, but 90% of the people in our facility are children. And when we house our videos on the cloud and things like that, security was something that was a strong point when we started going more towards the cloud base for our broadcasting services. And that was something that we actually had to go outside of our direct integrator for and bring in the security team and figure out how they're going to deploy that with our cloud systems. So again, it's not a matter of national security, but when you have so many children involved, our district is over 100,000 kids. So we had to figure out where we need to deploy the security and how to make it secure, whether it was just a dance competition or whether it was a graduation. But it's definitely a conversation as AV as a service as well, because the more we automate things on our side as operators, the easier it comes to managing our time. So it is definitely in the conversation. It's not a no, it's just a factor of the right team to come in and do that. And like I said, we had to look outside of our immediate integration team for the security side of things.
I think that is our time. It's our time. But yeah, I think that we learned something today, that change management is AV's friend, because you can stay in the picture. That's what we want. So yeah, I just want to say thank you guys. It's wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much. Such great information.